Hi, welcome to ALOUD with Mary. Today is the second installment of Joshua Genz's book, A Different Perspective. Now I promise you, you won't feel a thing, the priest insisted. Just remain calm, and this will all be over in a blink of an eye. Are you sure? I don't think I need to remind you how important my arm is, the man insisted between cringes as the needle pierced his skin. Trust me, I have this all taken care of. Who else would you trust with such an important task? A cry of agony could be heard from a few yards away from another patient. Could you excuse me for a second? The priest asked while already half across the room. Now what's the matter with you? Has the pain flared up again? The healer asked in the most sympathetic voice he could muster with his weary look. Sapientis, it's worse than before, and the pain is unbearable, the injured man cried out in agony. Sapientis looked the patient in the eyes and uttered a spell barely audible to the client, and the man fell into a deep slumber. The priest's attention was quickly taken by a moan in the northeastern side of the chamber, where a hunter lay bleeding out, on top of a wooden table stained by other spilled blood from its previous hosts. He rushed to the table and grabbed a cup of purified liquid, and slowly fed the injured hunter the enchanted liquid and muttered a spell. The hunter's eyes widened and slowly closed. His arms went limp, and after a few seconds the hunter's eyes fell open motionless. Sapientis pulled the blanket, soaked in blood, over the poor hunter's head. He stepped back in disappointment and breathed a sigh of sadness. He tried to reassure himself that the man was beyond saving. Sapientis, if you're not busy at the moment, could you please finish reattaching my arm? The first client yelled. I know you are busy, but I would very much like to feel my arm once more. I'll be there at once, Sapientis muttered. The priest slothed over to the man who lay on a wooden table with half his right arm still attached and proceeded to continue his work on the wound, while humming a certain rhythm that was familiar to the hunter but vague enough to not pinpoint the identity. Sapientis' chamber was riddled with blankets thrown in each and every direction. They were doused with blood from patients who came seeking his healing. The lighting was dim, for only 3 candles had been lit, which were positioned on each wooden table that still stood. The walls were made out of concrete, and the floor was marble that would have been as white as snow if the blood that had been spilled upon it did not cover the true color. There lay 4 bodies throughout the room, 3 of which were alive, and each were positioned in each corner to maintain some type of sanitation throughout the healing center. No windows existed in the room, for the chamber was underground. After 3 strenuous hours of sewing the victim's arm to the rest of his body, and another hour filled with chanting from Sapientis, the priest deemed that his work had been finished, and uttered the same spell to soothe the wounded hunter into a slumber. Exhausted, Sapientis glanced about the room and found that his other patients were asleep as well. He started for the stairwell, but thought better, and quietly crept around the room, collecting as many bundles of rags soaked in blood as he could hold, and proceeded to climb to the ground floor of his establishment. The priest threw the bundles of rags into a corner of the room, next to a bucket filled to the brim with dirty water and streaks of blood from previous cleansing sessions. Sapientis opened the door, needing fresh air and solitude. He dragged his weary feet to the side of the house. He leaned against the rickety wooden wall and slumped to his rear. He stared at his bloody hands and remembered the patient whom he'd claimed the life of. He whispered, I did the right thing. He was suffering for more than a few days now, and his condition only worsened as time went on. But I ended his life without his consent. Sapientis lowered his head and hands simultaneously and closed his weary eyes, as they had not seen darkness now for more than over 58 hours. He sat there, induced with self-pity for what felt like a few minutes, when he caught a whiff of smoke. He opened his eyes and noticed a cloud of ash as dark as night rising in the undergrowth from the jungle that lay not 30 paces from where his house was built. Thank you for joining me on ALOUD with Mary for the second installment of Joshua Genz's A Different Perspective. Join us tomorrow where I will be starting Chapter 2. Thank you.